What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers, and break down what's happening to the overall market thus far, what you should be watching for as time progresses, and also how things are looking in terms of news for Tesla, as we're seeing some interesting headlines coming out. But before I begin the down all this information, before I talk about what my price prediction is for Tesla going into tomorrow, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, we saw a very, very interesting day. Tesla got this little sell-off today, and that's after the Chinese registrations came out, not to mention some news from Deutsche Bank, which downgraded their deliveries target for Tesla. And then after that, Tesla got a bounce with the market trying to hold up, and we got a very flat day overall, a very flat close. But one thing that is good about Tesla stock is the fact that when looking at this from a technical standpoint, we are seeing some signs, some signals of a potential symmetrical structure that could be developing. So if we look at this very carefully, right? We have like a double bottom like structure right here. It came back up twice, and this looks very symmetrical. If this were to remain symmetrical, technicals do show a little liquidity grab could come, then we could just continue to push up on Tesla. We could be looking for a move back up towards 182 plus. Now, that is a real possibility, and technicals do show Tesla could be forming this. This also kind of resembles like a W structure. But I wouldn't solely count on this. I wouldn't solely trade based off technicals for Tesla because a lot of news also affects it. And we'll be watching for that as well. So I'm going to break down more details about the news, talk about the charts, what's happening with the CPI report that came out in the morning, and how all of this could affect Tesla for tomorrow. First and foremost, let's talk about CPI. CPI came in aligned with expectations, with some things being a little bit hot, but overall, for the most part, it was a so-so CPI report. So what do I mean by that? If you look at what happened, CPI year over year was at 3.2%. That is basically aligned with expectations at the hotter end of the forecast. If you look at inflation month over month at 0.4%, this is on the hotter end of the consensus, which is once again aligned with expectations, just on the hotter end. For core CPI, it was at 3.8%. This is once again the higher end of the spectrum at 3.8% for the expectation. So all the data was basically close to expectations on the higher ends, except for core CPI month over month. This was a little bit hotter than expected at 0.4% versus the expected 0.3%. So overall, not a bad CPI report. When this data came out, what basically happened was the market dropped at first, then it popped, and then it came back down when we opened. Then it started to pump throughout the day. So it was a very, very wild day on SPY. And let me just show you what I'm talking about. So let me show you the charts just to kind of like clarify that. Going back on the 5-minute time frame on SPY, you guys can see what this price action looked like. So CPI came out. SPY tumbled all the way down to 510, then pushed up to 514, then dropped back down to 510, then pushed up to 516, then dropped all the way back down to 513, then started to pump all the way up to 517, and excuse me, overall it remained bullish for the day. So that's a pretty good sign for SPY, holding up very nicely. The question is, can Tesla follow this trend? And I think there's a very good chance it will, so long as there isn't too much bad news for tomorrow. So that's a good sign. For additional pieces of data, let me just show you that CPI did come up just slightly for the month of February, but core CPI came down overall, and this was heavily dictated by the changes when you're not really including energy. So that's a big difference. Despite that, for data for tomorrow, I'm not really seeing anything until about 11:30 a.m. We have the 17-week bill auction. At 1 p.m., we have the 30-year bond auction. That is pretty much at a very quiet data day, which gives the market more leeway, more room to do its own thing. For earnings, just real quick, I didn't really see anything too significant after the market closed. We just have Clover and a few others. For tomorrow, we have Dollar Tree, Petco, and then a few others as well. For Clover, that's the only one I saw worth noting. We actually saw a big move in the after hours. Guidance was actually not bad. They saw the full year insurance actually increase by 81%. It also improved its full year net loss by about 126 million. Good earnings overall, nice improvement, good guidance as well for 2024. And the improvements helped the share price go up. They also beat on revenue. Their EPS was so not bad whatsoever. That's why the share price ended up going up. For other things out there, I just want to mention that looking at SPY, I want to call out that for Friday, which is going to be March 15th, we have a little bit over 1.3 million of these calls expiring, or very close to that. And we have over 4 million puts expiring with the 3.03 puts to call ratio. The majority of people have puts, so this is incentivizing the market makers to push the markets up higher. There's a very good chance they're going to continue to do so. This could help the markets go higher, but don't forget, I think the way the market makers are positioning themselves is they want to get us as high as possible, as quick as possible. And they're trying to do this as early as they can. So that's why they're trying, like right now, to do it. They could continue to do this as time goes on. But we'll have to see how the market responds to some new resistance levels, since some stocks are approaching all-time highs. Right now, the fear and greed index is currently at greed. We're actually approaching extreme greed again. Other indicators are all at their extremes, but the VIX is back to neutral, testing the 50 daily moving average, which is a sign of weakness for it. The chart also looks bearish on the VIX, which suggests that the market may pump a little bit higher, pushing the VIX down lower if things move as they typically do. For Tesla, we saw a lot of news come out. I made a video about Elon Musk, as he's going to be visiting Germany very soon, meeting up with some very important ministers and economists, and he's going to be talking about policy and what Tesla's trying to do. He's also going to likely negotiate with other people out there and then kind of look into the Gigafactory, which is it got its power back basically, but I'm not seeing too many headlines about them restarting production just yet. He's also talking about the next FSD beta update, which is good. They're basically reducing codes and improving the neural nets, which is very, very good for Tesla's capacity. On top of this, I just want to mention that there was more news coming out. Let me close that real quick. Sorry about that, guys. There's more news coming about the Chinese registrations. They were basically up for Tesla by about 5.6%, a slight improvement. But despite that, do not forget what I was talking about in the morning. Deutsche Bank came out and they cut Tesla's delivery target down to about 427,000 for Q1. And they were initially saying it's going to be 476,000. So a big cut by them. That's why I think Tesla kind of dropped in the morning. Despite that, we had about 87 million in volume. It's slowing down a bit. We need to see a surge in volume for this thing to really run. And on top of this, the short volume is still coming down just a little bit. Not too bad for Tesla at 41%. Additionally, we also have a buy rating from Deutsche Bank. This came out just a couple of days ago, as analysts are still bullish on the stock, but they're not as bullish as before. So they still think it's going to go up, but not as high as what they were initially thinking. Financial estimates are strong. Price-price ratio is a little bit down, as Tesla is still not the strongest it could have been compared to the market, because today SPY and the QQQ pumped very nicely. We saw the indices pump. We saw the Nasdaq do well. So did the S&P 500, but Tesla still closed very flat. Despite that, it should have pumped today, but it's still kind of weak because of the news. Wednesdays are historically green about 48% of the time. March tends to be a better month for Tesla historically, but the news is still getting in the way. And we'll see what happens with seasonality. We tend to be more volatile at 11 a.m. and also at 2 p.m. With that being said, that is it in terms of data. Now let's just focus on the share prices. Let's focus on the technicals and how the market's looking, in my opinion. So for Tesla, moving forward, I just want to mention that I am seeing a symmetrical structure, right? We have this bottom here, this push right here. We came down, the push, the bottom. It's very, very symmetrical looking. It's like a mirror image. And this would suggest that if this were to play out, Tesla could see another drop where they grab liquidity one more time and then it starts pushing back up. So in the pre-market, we might see Tesla down a bit. And then if this were to play out, Tesla could be pushing back up to 180. So I'll be watching that as resistance. If we break past that, I'll be watching 182. And this is where our neckline happens to be for a potential double bottom structure. So if it breaks 182.5, we're going to be looking for a big push to 185 plus. But that's going to depend if we get the break or not. If we're bearish, Tesla needs to lose essentially 177.6. If we lose that, we'll be coming back down towards 176.5, 175, and then eventually 172. In my opinion, considering the fact that SPY has more upside potential, so does the QQQ, there's a very good chance that Tesla may drop and then push as the day goes on, just like how it did today. But it might not drop as aggressively, and it may push even higher. I think there's going to be an attempt to break 180, which I think it could achieve. And we might make our way up towards 182. There's a very good chance Tesla tries to achieve that. Now, that's based off technicals, guys. But please remember something. Unfortunately, as of recently, Tesla has not been moving as well as it has been in the past based off technicals. It's moving more based off like data, based off news. The news is just completely dictating the stock right now, so it could be a little bit more difficult to predict. But I am doing the best I can. I still think there's a very good chance that what I said will pan out, where Tesla drops in and eventually gets a little bounce thanks to the markets. So we'll see if Tesla ends up achieving that. But I do believe Tesla's going to attempt to bounce and get it back up towards 180 plus. So we'll see if Tesla can achieve that goal. For SPY, on the other hand, this is looking very aggressive. So I just want to call out, I did make a little mistake in one of my earlier videos. Let me explain. So, yesterday I was saying the market would likely bounce, and that was correct. The market bounced, right? In my pre market video, I was a little concerned that the market would kind of like pop and then eventually drop a little bit because that's what's happening based off some signals. And that was correct in the beginning. Let me show you what I'm talking about. In the beginning, right here, basically when CPI came out, SPY kind of like popped and then it ended up dropping. And I was afraid like right here. So I released my video like during this phase when it was like dropping. I saw signals showing it's going to come down to at least 510. That happened. We hit the 510s, but instead of kind of like holding in this down range like this thing actually started to pump instead. And when that happened, I released another video. I corrected my mistake and I said, hey, we look bullish after all. And SPY continued to push. I remained bullish in my other video as well and it continued to push as well. So my videos were correct later on. But I did make one mistake in the pre-market. I'm willing to call that out. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to be as transparent as possible and let you guys know that I'm not always going to be correct. I sometimes do make mistakes, but I still try to do the best I can and I try to improve no matter what. So yes, I'm not going to be perfect. Some days I may be a little bit wrong on my analysis. My predictions could be wrong sometimes. But I still think, in all honesty, that I have been right the majority of the time this year. If you don't believe me, that's your choice. You have the right to think whatever you want. I will respect that no matter what. But anyways, looking at SPY right now, we look very bullish on the 4-hour time frame. I do think there's going to be an attempt to get close to 518. But once we approach this 518 resistance, it's going to be very tough because that's where the all-time high is. If we break past the all-time high, excuse me, we have the potential to get very close to this 520 area. I think the 519s will come. If we end up losing, we reject either off 518, maybe a little lower, then watch us come down to 516.5. If we lose that, 515 is going to be coming next, followed by 514.2 and 513.5. In my opinion, SPY is looking bullish, so it's going to push a little bit more most likely. So watch how it reacts to the 518 area. And I still think there's a very good chance it could try to break this and get closer to 520, but watch just to be safe. Watch resistance just to be as assured as possible. So I am still leaning more bullish on SPY and also on Tesla, at least for the time being. The QQQ has a nice breakout from the falling wedge, and we have an inverse head and shoulders like structure. So I think that this could retrace a little bit, retest 442.8, then start pushing up higher. And I think that we're going to be testing 444. If this breaks, I'd be watching 445 and eventually 446.5 is going to be our next target, and this imbalance up here. We have an imbalance close to the 447, so it can start pushing up higher. This chart looks bullish. It might retrace a bit, then start pushing up higher, so watch for that just to be safe. If we break down, watch 442 as support. If we lose that, there's 440 and 438. My gut is telling me it may retrace a bit, then start pushing up higher to these higher levels, all the way up into the 445 plus zone. So I'm leaning a bit more bullish on the QQQ. Part of why I say that is because of Nvda. Nvda is also looking bullish overall. We have this imbalance to fill way up here. There's an imbalance at 954, and for us to get there, we have to try to hold above 930. It is possible Nvidia kind of comes down just a little bit in the morning, then starts pushing up higher. If we get past 930 and hold above it, I think 950 is coming next for this target. The imbalance is specifically at 954, 953, around there. So I think there's a very good chance it's going to push higher. I am leaning more bullish on Nvidia. Might come down and start pushing up higher into the 950s. For another stock, we have Aapl. Aapl is looking so-so to me because we're kind of stuck right now. We're not really doing a whole lot. It's just in the middle, a little bit lackluster too. I was hoping for a bigger move. But basically, there is an uptrend on Aapl, technically speaking. We have two supports to watch for. We were bouncing off this bright yellow trend line many times. But then we ended up losing this right here. We came back above it, and we're just trading around it. That's not the best of signs. But the thing about Aapl is this. Let me show you something on the 4-hour time frame. We're stuck between our 50, which is the yellow line right here. That's the 50 EMA, and our 20 EMA, the green one below. We're just sandwiched between the two EMAs, going back and forth and back and forth. We did that for 2 straight days. To be bullish, you want to see it break 174 and start breaking above the yellow EMA here. To be bearish, you want to see it lose 172 and start sinking towards 171, then 168. Overall, guys, I'm in the middle with this. I mean, it's kind of stuck right now. It is showing some life as it's uptrending, so it does have potential to try to push towards 174 again. But until we see which way it breaks, we're just going to be range bound, and Aapl's very boring. So we just have to wait and see. With that being said, guys, I went over the majority of the tickers out there. Now I just want to talk about a couple of other things. So with Tesla having a symmetrical structure, there is a very good chance that it could attempt to get some kind of bounce, but we have to see a follow through move. We have to see Tesla try to get back above 180. I still think Tesla could achieve that. We might come down first and then try to push for 180 plus, but we need there to not be a really, really negative catalyst from the news. As long as that there's no like super bad news, Tesla could push for 180 plus and eventually hit 182.5 in my opinion. For another analysis, we have Rivian, which is looking relatively weak. I'm looking for a test of 12.19. If we lose 12.19, a bigger drop to 12 is coming, followed by 11.8. And if we're bullish, you want to see it break past 12.5. If that breaks, we could push higher. My guts tells me that 12.19 is coming. We could end up losing that. So watch for this very carefully. Rivian's looking kind of weak. I think 12.19 is going to be tested. We'll see if it bounces or not, but there is going to be a little bit more downside coming. SoFi is looking a bit more bearish right now. In my opinion, there is a risk of this coming down a little bit lower towards 7.2 if we end up losing 7.4. So I do think there's a risk of this dropping lower. This does look a bit more bearish, so watch for that just to be safe. For ARM, okay, this is showing life in my opinion. I think this could actually push a little bit higher. I think that there's going to be a test of our key EMAs right over here around this 133 area. I also said yesterday it should bounce and hit 130 in my prediction yesterday, and that's what happened. It's currently at 130.5. So I think there's a very good chance that we're going to be looking for 133 tomorrow. And then we'll see if it bounces or breaks past that or not. Do we reject off this or do we break past it? We'll just have to see. But I do see some more potential upside. Supermicro is looking pretty good to me. Nice bounce off our 50, trying to push up higher. We have an imbalance up here towards 1200. I think it's going to try to push for 1200 and push with Nvda. Might come down a bit and then start pushing up for that 1200 target. For Palantir, excuse me, sorry guys. Palantir, in my opinion, is not looking that great. It's on a downtrend right here. Might push up towards 25.15. If we reject off this level, we could start sinking back down towards this imbalance. Going to be looking for a test of the 23.5 area if we end up losing 24. So I think it might pop a bit to 25.15. We'll see if it rejects or not. If we break past this, we could push to 25.5. If we reject off this, we're going to sink back down lower. As of right now, it does favor kind of rejecting. It's looking kind of weak so far. For the Russell 2000 IWM ETF, we're going to be looking for some more sideways price action. We might be retesting 205.5, then come back down. Otherwise, it's just kind of sideways, not really doing a whole lot. For Microsoft, this is looking bullish. I think that 417 is coming. I'm going to be looking for, excuse me, a 417 test, and eventually 420. So it's looking pretty good so far. For AMD, it's trying to bounce right now. It's showing a lot of life, but I need to see this thing basically hold above 203.64. If that holds, I'm going to be looking for a test of about, I think 212 is going to be coming next. If we do end up breaking and holding 203.64, we have to hold above that, of course. So 212 is a real possibility. Then we could push even higher. So I'm seeing some life right over here. For the VIX, the 4-hour time frame is looking a little bit weak right now. If you look at this, we have this unfilled gap right here at 13.4 around there. So I think it's going to sink lower, and the market bouncing is what could cause that. So SPY might push a little higher, causing that to drop. We're seeing something very similar on the dollar index. The dollar might end up getting a rejection. Watch 102.92. Do we end up bouncing off that, or do we end up projecting off of it? If we end up losing 102.9, a bigger drop could be coming. So watch for that very, very carefully. On to Coinbase. Coinbase, in my opinion, we're basically barely holding 251. If we lose this and we hold below this throughout the day, there's going to be a risk of this sinking back down towards 242. If we bounce off 251, we could try to push up higher towards 260. It is looking a little bit weak right now, so it might actually drop a little bit into the 242 area, then come back up. So I think there's a risk of it sinking just a bit, but it might just trade sideways and consolidate for a bit. For Google is just stuck between two EMAs as well. Watch 140.97 as resistance. Watch support at 137.63. I have a feeling that Google might try to pop a little bit. It's going to try to fight for 141, and we'll see if it rejects or not. But we'll see how it goes from there. It might end up just trading sideways within this range, which is the most likely possibility. Amazon is very tricky because we have this head and shoulders like structure, which is still valid. So that's the reason why you want to be careful with it. But the technicals, are showing somewhat of a bounce that could be coming. So it might try to push hard. Depends on how it reacts to about 170, 177. If that breaks, our next target is going to be all the way up here towards 178 and then 180. If we end up losing 174.5, a bigger drop is going to come to 172. I think it's going to retrace to 174.5. That's what I think is going to happen. And then we're going to see if we get a bounce or not. We could end up losing this and sinking, so watch it very, very carefully. There is a head and shoulders on Amazon, so be very careful, but the technicals do show it might actually come down to 174 and then bounce. So I'm open-minded to the possibility it might push a little bit higher, but watch and see if the move lasts, because it might just be either we push a little bit then come back down very quickly, or we just fail and we just start sinking immediately. The head and shoulders is still valid, so we'll just have to wait and see what it does. So it's going to pop a little bit, but watch and see, do we end up failing quickly, or do we end up continuing to hold up? If we end up failing quickly, there's a risk of this selling off quite a bit with the head and shoulders like structure. So I'm going to be very careful and be very, very patient for now. Meta is looking pretty good. Meta looks to me like it might attempt to push a little higher. We're going to be looking at resistance at 500. If we could hold above 500, we could easily push towards at least 508 in my opinion. If that breaks, our next target is going to be 510 plus. So I think Meta does have potential to push higher. It's looking bullish to me. So we'll just have to wait and see how it does. Anyways, guys, that is it for the video. I just want to thank you all so much for listening. As for Tesla, like I said before, Tesla is heavily dictated by the news. We do have a potential symmetrical structure developing, which means Tesla might drop a bit, then start pushing up higher. So watch and see if we could try to hold above 180. If we do so, 182 could come in, and 184. There is potential for Tesla to bounce with the markets, but we'll just have to wait and see how things go. For SPY and the others, we're pushing nicely. We look bullish, but watch resistance. We'll see if SPY gets stopped or not as we get closer to the all-time high. So just be very careful from that end. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow. Thank you, and peace out.